and best for 2013. Thing is, he has sent it out to everybody. But at the same time, all those who got it felt that they were being, they were being identified. And so there was a common message. So I do not know whether this is going to be the future where politicians for elections and various other things, they are going to turn to this type of digitalization to convey their messages. I don't know about India and Pakistan so much, but whenever something goes wrong, the government usually appoints commissions. Commissions, of course, there are two aspects. One is the commission that is taken by politicians whenever something is awarded. The other one is the commission when something goes wrong in the country and the president or the executive appoints a commission. But when you look through that, I still remember something that was told to us by the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka in the 50s, Sir John Kotalawala. He said, commissions are, appointing a commission is like going to the toilet. First, there is a lot of noise, lot of paperwork, and then within a few days, the whole matter is dropped. So it's something very similar. As far as the digital is concerned, many people look at the digital content of what is appearing on the net mostly for obituaries, to know who has died, and for marriage proposals. This is as far as Sri Lanka is concerned. Of course, all the daughters are lovely, fair, and all males are very, very good. They don't touch alcohol. But so far, nothing has been said about the nocturnal habits of these men. So, in the long run, one aspect of this digitalization is that editors and others do not fear to hold a story. In the good old days, you held a story because you did not want the other person to know that the story is now available. But now, because of this digitalization, you have to go beyond that. You can't just hold a story. It's everyday news. So therefore, you have to do something more to have the attention of the audience. A story sometimes, therefore, is given on a platter. Pictures still help sales. Many of the newspapers of Sri Lanka use huge pictures, sometimes as much as half a page, to draw the attention of the reader, because they are competing on the other side with digitalization, where there are pictures available and also more graphic details of what has actually happened. I have brought some samples of these papers so that at the end of this, I will leave it for you all to have a look. Some newspapers in Asia have already started their own PR companies, where you have to go and pay the PR companies for you to appear in newspapers. I do not agree with that, but it's obviously something that is now beginning to happen. Some newspapers have now begun to have video clippings. For instance, one newspaper in Sri Lanka, they asked for a license to operate a TV station. The government said no. So now they have gone in for digitalization of news. And some of the video clips that they show are absolutely fascinating, because they get behind the news and they get the person to speak out. And that is only available through that particular channel or that particular clip. So these are new ways. But on the other hand, what happens is when you go in for digitalization, the problems that we are facing, as long as the items are free, people will go to it. As soon as you say, if you want to get into this newspaper site, you have to pay some money, the numbers drop. There are a number of reasons for this. One is that you have to pay through your credit card. In Asia, I do not know once again what it's like in other countries of Asia. In the West, credit cards are widely used. But in our countries, there is a suspicion about using credit cards, especially local credit cards. They don't trust the organizations. They think that the information will be will be freely available to others. So they don't want to do that. So therefore, that dropped. So that is one thing that has to be overcome in going in for digitalization. They will spend thousands on eBay or Amazon, but not on subscriptions to newspapers. The cost of phones is another thing. If you want to have these latest things, you have to have the latest phones. The other issue is the colossal amount that is charged for downloads. The companies which are selling these services, they charge huge amounts. Once again, I do not know what rates are charged by other countries in South Asia, but in Sri Lanka, it's a huge cost. Then, of course, one very important factor is that you have to think of the editing. Because unlike in a newspaper, when you, and the president of Sri Lanka, at that time J.R. Jayawardena, and J.R. Jayawardena gave Ronnie, the finance minister, beans, and he really scolded them. So we had this headline in the newspaper saying, President raps Ronnie, R-A-P-S. Next day, when the item appeared, the Presidential Secretariat issued a denial, saying the President denies he rapped Ronnie and all these details are not quite correct. So I told the journalist, the sub-editor, chief sub-editor, okay, you run this story, don't make any comment because it's a denial from the President and we can't argue. And that day I came home about 7 o'clock instead of usually about 9 o'clock. Had my dinner, felt very uneasy after dinner, and I told my wife I'm going back to the press. And I went back to the press and they were about to print this story. And I looked at it and my gosh, I was really shivering. The news, the headline that was given to the story was, the President denied he raped Ronnie. So from rapped, one P had dropped out. And I don't know what you will feel as an editor if you say that the President of the country denies he's raping somebody. So at that I'll stop.
Okay, thank you very much. Shami Sahab, aapka experience with...
Just listening to my colleagues, I remember a TV clip. Jay Leno, he's a famous comedian, TV host in USA. So he included in one of his monologues recently a word for New York Times that it has completed 158 years of its publication. He congratulated New York Times on completion of 158 years of its publication. And the punchline was that he had read about this milestone on the internet. So I think we are really into the age of internet, and the digital media is here to stay and to grow. And just to wrap up on the subject which we were referred to, the global publishing industry right now is going through a period of turmoil as broadband penetration is rising and new devices are coming to distribute digital content. And the consumers are also making transitions. They are switching from print medium to digital medium, though transition varies with age, with region, with language. But I think that this does not mean that this does not mean the abandonment of newspapers. Owing to a recent figures by World Newspaper Association, they told us that more than 2.5 billion people read newspapers in print right now, and 600 million people read newspapers online. That represents more readers and users than global users of internet. The publishers have now been able to reach to a much larger audience, which was not part of their traditional readership base. The audience is bigger than ever if you include all the platforms. For example, Guardian Mail in the UK, they have put all their content online and they for free, and now they are targeting themselves to become global brands, global news brands. So this is something which was not possible like a decade before. So I think right now it's not an audience problem for the newspaper industry. The audience are there and they're growing. It's basically a revenue and business model problem. And no business model problem can be fixed without first fixing the editorial model problem. So I think right now, what newspaper organizations have to do, they have to reach to their audience across all platforms, and we'll have to adapt and invest in new technologies. The real challenge is to keep up with the readers in a way people want information, and provide original content so you can make them pay something also for the content. So I think in this digital age, there's three or four, I think some of the things have been referred to by our colleagues also, but there are three or more key challenges for content in this digital age. One content I think which is referred to to our colleague also was the newspaper have to give in their content, they have to reinvent themselves. They have to give analysis and insights to the news also. Usually in this age, consumers expect quality news, reviews, information to be instant, easily accessible and usually free. But they usually know what has happened, but they do not know why what has happened. So I think in this area, newspapers can reinvent. The newspaper should focus on specialized contents. Even now in this age, specialized content, people are able to charge money for specialized content. The examples of Wall Street Journal, the examples of Financial Times. Then the greater customization, there are opportunities for greater customization in this era. Silicon Valley is now a media valley. Google is the largest publisher in the world. Google publishes pages with advertisements. Facebook is the social media in which users publish their own content. So for all practical purposes, these are all media companies which are reinventing themselves. So media also has to reinvent themselves, and it has a lot of opportunities for customization. Then media organizations also have to work on enhancing user intensity on their websites. It's a big area we can go into if we go into discussion. Then, as I think was mentioned by our moderator also, the media has to become more local in its coverage. It has to become involved in the coverage of local activities, events. There are opportunities for revenue generation also. Then the media has to be more responsive and interactive. In this age, usually consumers and readers, they want to be part of the intellectual debate by contributing comments on stories and contributing content. This high level of interaction will continue to force media organizations to evolve in ways far different than the traditional at arm's length. And someone I think very aptly said that local is now the new global. Then another, I think one of our friends also said, the use of video, we have to increase the use of video. There is an opportunity due to this online medium that even newspapers can in their stories, and to some extent they can replace TV channels also, because TV channel remains the preferred form of news consumption for readers. So there is an option for using videos for stories also. So in short, I'm of the view that there can be crisis for the traditional institutions to reinvent, but that's different from there being a crisis for the profession. In a lot of ways, it's also time for a lot of opportunities in journalism. Thank you.
Okay, we are really running short of time, so I'll just take a one-line kind of answers for these questions. Let's start with Gopi. Do you actually see, do you believe in print plus digital as one concept, or do you actually see print and digital working in silos in your organization? How do you tackle this editorially?
Print and digital. The technology and newsprint should embrace each other, and they should adopt whatever.
Editorially, how do you tackle it? Do you have the same journalists working on both? Is that how does your organization channelize resources?
Journalism is only one source. These are all other, whether it is print or digital, these are all method of communication only. So I don't feel any difference. This is an advantage for people to digitize. Or those who cannot access hard newsprint, he can see it through some other.
So if I get you right, your digital content is still planned by the same editor who's actually doing the print content?
Yes.
Okay. What do you think, ma'am?
I think while the digital world offers such great possibilities, I think at least from a Pakistani perspective I'll talk, I think the newspaper online editions are really not doing justice to the possibilities of, the digital world. For me, the online editions are more like a virtual print version. And I think a lot of that is because most of the digital, on the online edition, editors or reporters were either working previously with the print and have moved on to the digital world. So they actually still think print.
Are you actually feeling like it's a negative, the negative of baggage of?
I think I am actually. Being from the newspaper print side, I think what the digital is doing is just cannibalizing a bit of print and not adding value to the reader that they have taken.
So how do you plan to
taken,
address this issue? I mean, do you want fresher, newer team to handle the digital?
We don't have it yet,
Okay.
but that is what I think because the possibilities of digital is so huge. You could have audio, visual, interactivity, blogging, immediate response, and so on. Print doesn't have that, and those are the advantages that digital forum has to offer. It can't be just a remote, on the screen printed version. It has to be more interactive, it has to have the audio-visual element to it, it has to have an immediate response to it, it has to be live, almost live.
And
Those are the advantages.
and that requires special skill sets which may or may not be available.
Absolutely. I think it's still new because this has come to us rather quickly. We are not used to it. We are not perhaps even prepared for it. But the possibilities are tremendous. You know, we can learn from the Western world, from the region also, of how the digital has impacted their communities. And I think we need to jumpstart that process rather than just wait for an internal evolution of it.
Mr. Yappa?
Well, I think
If you could get the mic on, please.
rather than being rivals, I think there are tremendous opportunities to work together in terms of digitalization and also the newspapers, where through the digital format you're drawing attention to what is happening, but for more detailed information you need to go into the newspapers.
Do you need different skill sets for that? That's my question. Do you need different people working on them?
You certainly need different people, but at the same time I think the editorial board, I feel, needs to be common, so that it's not two different groups who are there, so that they know what they are trying to achieve. Then it can be a symbiotic existence.
What about you, sir?
I think what was said earlier by the CEO of Times of India was that you have to build the brand. Print is a medium through which you are pushing out content. Online is a medium through which you are pushing out content. So one thing is that you have to build the brand. Second thing is the digital, you have to develop skill sets for the digital world, because in our organization we are trying to do that also, because only typing does not do the job in the digital world. You know, you have to have some idea of, you know, CSS, you have to have some idea of HTML code, etc. So you have to develop different kind of skill set also. And the third thing is that the kind of readership most of the newspaper, like our newspaper, is getting from internet is actually very different from our traditional readership. So we have to develop content to cater to that readership also. So these are 2-3 things which we have to keep in mind.
One more question starting from Gopi quickly. Mobile phone or the bigger screens? What's the future?
These are all value added things only. Now you can see all the news through your smartphones and other things and get updated. Newspapers, print paper up to, you can see only that what is printed at 2 a.m. That is the last deadline, or 3 a.m. This in the digitalized and these mobiles you will get updated. These are all the value added things which we have to embrace very positively.
Now, in the sense, which one do you think in near future, like for India, I know we have a very large amount of smartphone users and growing at a very faster pace, and a lot of people believe that that probably is the future and not probably the larger screen. So do you think we should develop more on the mobile phone platform for content, for everything, or do you still think otherwise?
No, the mobiles is a new area, and it is a value-added service, and there also we have to work a lot. And there is no point of fighting or other thing. We have to act, embrace or adopt the new technology in every minute. Otherwise, we will be redundant.
Sadia, how important is the mobile platform? In the sense,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, in the sense you have the larger screens, which are the PCs, and you have the mobile phone app. So, a lot of countries, you know, kind of probably it's skipped and gone into the mobile phone. So, that is a faster growing platform. So, would you see that in Pakistan? Do you agree that, or?
Obviously. I mean, everyone has a phone in their hands. Even the cook in my house, the cleaning lady, everyone does. So there's absolutely not saying that the impact the mobile has had, not just on the media itself, but in every way we live our lives. So that is just so obvious. The only thing is, where does it finds its space in the media dimension? Is it in addition to television, internet, digital, print, magazine, outdoor, or is it taking away from anything? I think mobile is just a new addition to all of this. I think it is not going to replace any of the other mediums.
So you are not of the opinion then finally your world will all come into the mobile phone?
It will, but I think the need for each one of them separately still will remain. Yeah.
What about you, sir?
I think so too, that they're having different things, but at the same time that they should be compliant. That's why I mentioned about having a common editor for both these things, if you are having a website and also, so that he knows what is happening. And he can also then play on using the digitalization to draw more attention to the newspapers. But I don't think newspapers are going to disappear. It's like when television came in, everyone said, oh, that's the end of newspapers. But what has actually happened? Newspapers have grown rather than diminished. Because in certain countries, they have come down. But in the majority of cases, I think the newspapers have actually grown and the newspapers have become better.
What about you, sir?
I think you have to have a differentiation between a mobile phone and a bigger screen phone, like for example tablet or iPad, because what the research tells us is that at the time when mobile phones were active, only mobile phones, so there was not a significant drop in the sales of newspapers, you know. But by the time these tablets have come in, like these iPad or Galaxy or other tablets with a bigger screen, so they have increased the user friendliness of reading newspapers on the internet. And you know, on iPad, the 10 most top selling applications are newspaper applications.
Sure.
In a recent survey, 6 out of 10 people who were surveyed that what would they like to, you know, read newspaper on the tablet. So 6 people out of 10 said they will like to read newspaper on the tablet because it gives a good experience. So I think yes, convergence is happening. Everything will be coming down to, you know, one mobile phone, but in a bigger shape, in a user-friendly manner. But ultimately, convergence is happening. That's true.
Thank you. I think it's time to take a few, maybe couple of questions from the floor.
Okay, just about 1 or 2 max.
One
yeah.
or two max. So quickly.
Could you
Yeah, I
please
think
raise
there's
your
someone
hands?
there.
We've got ushers. Yes, the gentleman there with the tie. Please introduce yourself.
And you tell who you want to ask the question.
I'll be asking the question from all the panelists. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Jawad. I've one simple thing to ask. I don't know about the other countries in the region. I don't have any experience in that. But in Pakistan, primarily print media, there are costs, there are higher costs, there are less. But primarily, are we not having less readers? We are not developing readership habits. We don't have any readership habits anymore. People think it's easier to watch TV and listen to the news. We don't read papers. And there is so much in newspapers that has gone unread. Everyone may be interested if he is interested. Otherwise, we don't read. Next generation is not just reading. They're not reading books. They're not reading papers. They're not reading actually anything.
Your question,
we are not
please be brief. Your question and
how
to who?
are they working on, in Pakistan, how can they develop this thing and then what can be done?
It's better that you and Sadia, either of you take the question.
Well, Jawad, I'm glad you asked that because I've also heard so much about this fact that youth doesn't read anymore. I just came in from Lahore 2 days ago, and there was a huge, there was a book fair that was being organized by international and national publishers. And I tell you, the response there was huge. It was phenomenal. And you know what, which was the biggest age group that attended that book fair? The 12 to 18-year-olds. It's actually, we have just given up on our youth. The responsibility is with us. And as part of the newspaper business industry, I think we are responsible because we are not talking to them. We are not talking to them in their language. We are not talking to them about their issues. And that is where the responsibility lies with us. And I think as that is an issue, I think that is a huge challenge.
If you take the percentage of newspapers selling in this country as compared to the population ratio, that is maybe one of the lowest in the regions. If you take the number of books which are being in this country as compared to population, it is maybe one of the lowest in the region. But right now, it has 26 million internet users right now. So I think the opportunity which is coming is how to catch this youth on the internet, on the digital media.
Thank you, Amar. Thank you all
Thank you very
panelists. I think we'll wrap up the session here. We've had a pretty interesting start to this 2-day summit. And we'd like to acknowledge our panelists here, Taqir.
Yes, we'll start with mementos. For you, please go ahead and receive your memento.
You can keep calling out.
Yeah. May I request Mr. Khushnood Ali Khan, Jinnah newspaper editor, to please come and present to Mr. Yapa. Is Mr. Khushnood Ali Khan here?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Khushnood Ali Khan. Thank you, Mr. Yapa. May I call upon Dr. Jabbar Khatak, Chief Editor Awami Awaz, come to the stage and present to.
We can again do with a round of applause. If anything, it can wake you up.
May I request Fauzia Shaheen, Editor Dastak, to please come and present to Omar Shami. Applause for the lady, please.
Yes, to be a little skewed, but that's the case with most conferences that I have been to as well. I wonder why, though.
May I please request Mr. Riaz Mansoori, Editor Women's Zone, to please come and present to the moderator, Mr. Bhattacharya.
You need
Aye, aye. Thank you very much, all of you, and a big round of applause for all the panelists and the moderator.
Thank you very much for taking the time, the Indian delegates, and of course, Mr. Yapa, who's come in from Sri Lanka. I hope you have a beautiful stay here in this beautiful country. We'll move on to the next panel. The title for the panel, the next panel is You Only Live Twice, Innovative Marketing Tools. Tahir? Taqir. Sorry.
Well, when we talk about innovative marketing tools, we have a very interesting panel discussion here. We're talking about creative print advertising solutions, becoming an advertising solutions provider, and structuring cultural change, changing the mindset. And we've got a very interesting mix of panelists here. Suparna will introduce the panelists.
Yes, Takir. Apologies for that faux pas. As and when you hear your name, I would request you to please come up on stage and take your place. Due to the paucity of time, again, we're crunching the panel to about 45 minutes. In case we still have time, we'll do a Q&A. Otherwise, we'll eliminate the Q&A. And also request your opening statements to be brief. Mr. Tahir A. Khan, Chairman and Founder of Interflow Communications. Mr. Khan excels in building and developing brands. He is a patron of the Cancer Society, a trustee of the Fatimid Foundation, a member of the Board of Governors of Dr. Ziauddin Postgraduate Institute of Medical Sciences. Welcome, Mr. Khan. And member of the Young Presidents Organization and the International Advertising Association. These are a few organizations he is associated with. Welcome, Mr. Tahir Khan. Mr. Masood Hashmi. Mr. Masood Hashmi is the CEO of Orient McCann. He has over 26 years of experience in advertising and public relations. He has contributed immensely, holding prominent positions in major management, marketing and advertising associations. He has the distinction of being the youngest president of the Marketing Association of Pakistan, a position he is now holding for the 6th term, and is also the recipient of the most coveted Marketing Excellence Award. Mr. Masood Hamid, Secretary General of APNS and Director Marketing Dawn Group of Newspapers. He is Secretary Marketing Association of Pakistan, member of Marketing Association of Pakistan, and Vice President of International Advertising Association Pakistan Chapter. He is a founder, member and treasurer of the Italian Development Council, independent trade body for the promotion of trade between Pakistan and Italy. Member of MAL PAK, that is Malaysia-Pakistan Joint Business Council. Representing the Indian media is Mr. Ravi Dhariwal, the CEO of Times of India. We had the pleasure to hear Mr. Dhariwal speak through the keynote address of the summit. Welcome, Mr. Dhariwal. And finally, Mr. Krishna Prasad, who will moderate this session. Mr. Krishna Prasad, the Editor-in-Chief of Outlook magazine. In a 26-year career in journalism, he has worked in 4 cities and 6 publications. Welcome, Krishna. Taught journalism in 3 continents, edited 4 books, and published 2 globally acclaimed blogs, and publishes 2 globally acclaimed blogs, including one on the media. All his favorite pursuits, apparently along with Mr. Batra also, start with C, which is coffee, cinema, crossword, classical music, and cricket. And interestingly, as a long-time leg break bowler, Krishna stirs everything anti-clockwise. So better watch out for this session.
Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be here in Islamabad. I'm going to keep this very, very simple. Welcome everybody to Islamabad who is not from Islamabad. I'm very glad to see that this whole thing has been built around this whole James Bond principle that Suparna seems to have thought of. But I was just wondering, sitting through these sessions and listening to people, whether this is quite up the wrong alley sometimes, you know. James Bond was very, very fictional. We're all too real in newspapers and magazines. James Bond was a very secret agent. We are a very, very public one. And in 60 years, Mr. Bond, for all his productivity and vitality and so on, seems to have produced only 25 films. And in 60 years, we in every single newspaper could have produced at least 21,000 issues by now. So I think, is James Bond the right icon for this summit? You don't know. Mr. Bond always seems to report to a woman boss. M. How many women bosses do we report to? Not too many, sadly. He also seems to speak only one language, English, most of the time, while we in this room could probably already speak a dozen straight off. But I think, and this is key to this panel discussion, over the next 30 minutes, and I think we're going to keep it slightly more interactive. The key thing for me as far as this panel discussion goes is that James Bond and us in the media are related in one single unique aspect, and that's product placement. Mr. Bond's cars, Mr. Bond's clothes, Mr. Bond's watches, Mr. Bond's gadgets are all aimed at selling them to us. And likewise, much of what you see in our newspapers and in magazines and especially on television screens are really about subtly placed products which are aimed at being sold to you. So I think that's the one thing that unites James Bond with this summit, and that's where we will start this panel discussion on, which is this whole idea of advertising, creative advertising solutions in our newspapers and magazines and so on. But just like Mr. Bond cannot only just sell products, he also needs a plot, you see. You know, he just cannot sell his products through his movies. Just like that, we in print newspapers and magazines cannot just sell products. We also need a story. And that really is the story of this panel discussion, which is that Mr. Bond changed himself. Mr. Bond from movie number 1 to movie number 25 is not the same Bond. You've seen Sean Connery, you've seen David Niven, you've seen Timothy Dalton, you've seen George Lazenby, you've seen Roger Moore, Pierce Brosnan, and now Daniel Craig. What have we in newspapers and magazines, and particularly in newspapers, done to change ourselves over these last few years? So that's where we will start this panel discussion on. And I welcome you all to this, and I welcome each of my guests here. And our guests...
The cat says to the Somalian cat, "Cat, get up and fight." He said, "I don't know you, I have nothing against you, and can't you see I'm starving, why should I fight?" He said, "No, no, get up and fight." So the Somalian cat got up, and in 30 seconds the fight was over, because pow went the Somalian cat, down went the American cat. So the cat went back to Joe very depressed and narrated the whole incident. The next C-130 from Washington, there was vitamins, proteins, steroids, calcium, iron, everything flown in. And the American cat goes to the gym and pumps for another 2 weeks and comes back. And this time it goes, and the Somalian cat has been starving for another week. So it goes and says, "Somalian cat, get up and fight." And the cat says, "Look, I told you, I don't know you, I have no enmity with you, and I'm starving." He says, "Now it's American honor, you better get up and fight." So the fight this time took longer than 30 seconds, but still pow went the Somalian cat, down went the American cat. And the American cat got up and said, "Look, explain to me, you starving Somalian cat, you have been starving here, I have taken all the vitamins, iron, calcium, protein, steroids, I have pumped the gym, how come you beat me?" He says, "That's the trouble with you Americans, you don't know who your enemy is. I am not a starving Somalian cat, I am a starving Somalian tiger." Which brings me to the fact that internet and internet readership should not be taken so lightly by the print medium, because it is not a starving Somalian cat, it is a starving Somalian tiger. And the other thing, Wendy Chamberlain, we met in Washington a few months ago, and I narrated this joke. And when you say this to Americans, they laugh at first, but then they're silent because they suddenly realize that there's a tinge of truth in it. But she came back and she said, "Mr. Khan, I've got a cat joke for you also." And I said, "What's your cat joke?" And she said that there were two cats in a cage. One was big and burly, that was the American cat. And there was another cat who was not so big and burly, that was the Pakistani cat. So obviously the Pakistani cat felt uneasy with this big and burly cat. So one day the Pakistani cat got to know that in the cage next door there is a cat which is bigger and burlier than the American cat. So the first opportunity the Pakistani cat got, it jumped across to the other cage. And lo and behold, there was a cat which was bigger and burlier than the American cat. So the Pakistani cat runs there and whispers into his ear, "Who are you, my friend?" He said, "I am a Chinese cat." So the Pakistani cat whispered in his ear, he said, "Look, if you and I team up, we can beat the hell out of that American cat. So the Chinese cat says, shh, don't say that. He said, why? He said, how do you think I've become bigger and burlier than that cat? So the Pakistani cat says, how? He says, by cooperating with that cat. And I think that is another lesson. I think the direction that print advertising has to take is by combining its dynamism, interactive events. Dawn is very good at, like Dawn Lifestyle, etc. But I think by combining its reach and come out with innovative solutions through its combination at internet, which allows them far more dynamism in their advertising, and also to treat that as a friend and an ally, rather than seeing that as a threat. I think that is the greatest opportunity for print. Thank you.
Well said.
And with our advertisers, we put a premium on innovation. And that premium we put by judging our people a lot better. They get more margin, and we give a very, very good deal to our advertiser if they were to actually partner with us in that piece of advertising. So we have gone on to a journey whereby we've used many different formats in our newspapers. We've used many different ideas in our newspaper which continuously surprise our reader. Volkswagen came to us and said that they wanted to create a campaign which really arrested the attention of people, and what we finally co-created with them is that we put a chip in every Times of India so that launch. And this was a huge hit. You know, almost everybody was surprised. In fact, my maid, I normally get up in the morning and the maid brings me a cup of tea and the paper. And so when I got up and I asked her for the paper, she said, don't touch the paper today. She said, I said, why? What happened? No, there is a ghost. You know, because when she opened the paper, suddenly there was a voice. So, you know, that arrested the attention of people. So within the main point I want to make is that innovation is at a premium within the company. Now, sometimes that comes as a at a cost, in the sense that a lot of times is spent resolving whether the editor likes it or not. A lot of times when you bring new formats, new designs, new bits in the ad, it comes with having to talk to our editor and saying that we want to put this ad in the paper, and he says, no, the front page is way too important, and all that negotiation takes place between people who bring the ad and our editor. But we found a via media whereby a certain percentage of our front page is reserved for advertising, a percentage. Now, it can go in different places. We've also found a via media that in case it exceeds that, we will add a flap or add a jacket. We've also found other via medias whereby the only thing that is really sacrosanct is that it cannot affect the content of the paper. That the ad cannot affect what our editor wants to write about it. Placement, you know, is something which they compromise on. New ideas, new designs, a little bit. Sometimes it happens that the paper has to be put to bed a little early because the design just takes a little bit of time. All that we live with. But only because we are trying to foster a culture of innovation within the company. And I think that's hugely important, because if you do business the same way as we did business 10 years ago, then the newspaper industry will suffer. We are facing new challenges, and we need to partner with our advertisers in order to do this. The last example of innovation that I can talk about is that a lot of our stories, editorial stories, required amplification, require videos, require interactivity, stuff that the previous channel was talking about. So we've created an app whereby if you have a smartphone, you can just click on that, the QR code, and you can see the whole story in a very 360-degree way. We've done the same thing for our advertiser. If we have an advertiser for Mercedes-Benz, and if he wants to show how to test drive the car and how the car rides, then all that you need to do is to put that take that app and show it, which gives our advertiser an innovative. So this is something which is in our culture. We try to do it all the time, and I think that is the only way we can fight for the attention of both the reader as well as for the advertiser.
Thank you very much. We'll just do about 10-12 minutes of questioning from this side of the panel with your permission, and then we'll throw it open to the floor. Mr. Dhariwal, let me start with you and take Mr. Khan's example of the cats. Is the lazy cat reacting too much and too fast and too hard? And is it overdoing this somewhat in terms of advertising solutions or innovations? Is there a possibility that we are kind of not taking due notice of what we are in the business for? Are we overdoing it? Is the cat overreacting? And let me give you two examples. Two extraordinary events in the last 6 months. One is the victory of Barack Obama as the American president, the re-election of Barack Obama. And last week, the hanging of Afzal Guru. Is it all right in the name of advertising solutions, and I'm not targeting any one newspaper, yours or any other, is it all right for newspapers to not put Barack Obama's election victory on page 1 in the name of innovation? And is it okay for Afzal Guru's hanging to be not on page 1 in the name of an advertising solution?
Yeah, I think it is okay. That's my point of view. I think the reader reads it and understands the importance of advertising and understands the importance of news very, very well. New advertising is largely glanced at, and important reports like Barack Obama's victory or Afzal Guru's hanging is read, and read very, very attentively by reader. All that the advertising does is leverages off the attention of the reader. And if we don't do that, then how the newspaper works, at least for us. To produce a newspaper in India costs us, our paper, costs us about 22 to 23 rupees every paper. We collect back from our reader barely 2 rupees or 3 rupees. If we are going to be relevant, we have to make sure that our advertising pays for the balance, subsidy that the reader gets. And therefore, I have no doubt in my mind that advertising should not be looked down upon. And in fact, the more, the better, as long as it doesn't interfere in the actual content of what the editor writes, actual development of the trust between what we write and our reader. As long as you keep that framework in mind, then to say that no, this should be not that.
Actually, it readers to the advertisers and advertisers, I think it happens that have a creative advertising, because innovative advertising and out of box, as he said about the Volkswagen thing, where you have some activity there, then I think the impact is much more. And there I think, because I personally think the name of the game is not readership. The name of the game is engagement. The whole ball game is engagement. How you make the reader happy, or with your creativity, or with your talk, that engagement is there. And
Mr. Hamid, I mean, do you, as someone who does this at dawn through events and so, do you guys see this as, or do you see? Ask one more bit, because it's linked to both these issues. Do you, in a newspaper, look at the newspaper as fourth estate, which is as a vital part of democracy, as real estate with which you can play around any which way in the
need of innovative marketing tools in newspaper? We have to look at marketing tools. Is it because that the newspaper is getting boring with black and white ads of the similar size, or is it to ensure that they continue to survive, maintain their share? On the editorial side, I think in a newspaper, the reader by two departments, not the accounts, the editorial and the marketing. And fortunately for TOI, maybe they have synergized. We are still at that stage where independent editors look at the reader's interest in a different way. We are getting there, but still there's time to come.
Mr. Khan, you spoke of Somalia and Washington and China and Pakistan and vis-a-vis the cats. But here's a question I want to ask you as someone who seems to be slightly socially aware. Would Pakistan be a better country if every newspaper adopted the Times of India model?
I think before I answer that question,
I mean that, I don't mean that in any derisive way, in the sense of revenue creation, in terms of advertising, in terms of innovation.
Yeah.
I mean that way too.
No, I should first recommend that Ravi should spend some time with Masood's editor, because that's the most. But I totally agree with Ravi and agree with what Masood was saying. A newspaper reader at times is really delighted when he sees some innovative idea. Man basically likes innovation. I think every one of us appreciate creativity, appreciate out-of-the-box ideas. We are all made for that. And I think if someone opened a newspaper and you heard a song because there was a ship there, I don't think that a newspaper reader would say, who the hell did this? Maybe the editor of Dawn will not agree, but by and large, people respond to creativity, people respond to great ideas. And I think also about the fragrance, when you can sample a fragrance, when you can hear a sound, I think it adds to the value. And I think advertising is not necessarily a nuisance. Advertising is as much part of our life and a necessity. And in the case of newspapers or in the case of channels, TV channels, I mean, we need that oxygen. I mean, in Pakistan television, there's no subscription, so as channels, we need advertising. Likewise, with the cost of paper and everything, you have to have advertising. And if you have to have advertising, why not make it innovative? Why not make it a surprise, a pleasant surprise for the reader?
No, you didn't answer my question. Let me repeat that. Yeah. Which is that while chasing revenue, chasing ads, chasing innovations, and let's make it very clear, editors are not opposed to innovations either. Okay, so we are all on the same page. But I'm just asking a very simple question in the sense that, can we just keep putting the cart before the horse? Especially in countries like ours, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India for sure, regardless of the need for optimism, the need for good news, regardless of the general human tendency for happiness, can we remove our senses and suspend our disbelief in favor of death?
It's saying
yep.
Is the cart.
Yep.
And news is the horse. I personally think that there are occasions when advertising is done so overtly or so in the face that it annoys, and that's in bad taste. I think what we should balance is, the balance should be between good taste and bad taste. So if you're doing innovative advertising, it should be advertising done in good taste, so that it does not affect the sensibilities of the reader. But I personally still think that good advertising, creative advertising always brings a smile on your face, and I think that the reader gets an extra bonus besides reading the news. And coming on the same page, I agree with again the model of Times of India, because I personally think that we need to feel optimistic and about our country, our future, our lives.
Sure.
And in fact, I was thinking that we should tell our TV channels also to, in their news bulletin, have one section called Good News, because there's so much bad news going around that there is a need for optimism and good news.
Mr. Dhariwal, one last set of questions. One of the themes of this panel discussion is changing the mindsets. Having heard us and having heard many people here, whose mindset do you think needs the maximum change? Is it the mindset of journalists and editors? Is it the mindset of advertisers and agencies? Is it the mindsets of readers? Whose mindset, as we go forward, as we face these challenges of lazy cats, whose mindset needs to change the most Or does it all have to happen at the same time?
Yeah, I think it all needs to happen at the same time. The world around us is changing. Whilst we, luckily for us, one thing is going right for the media industry, which is that a human being, man or woman, is spending more time on media today than they did 5 years ago, than they did 10 years ago. The time spent on media is increasing, so we have bigger opportunity. But there is even more fragmentation. The number of media vehicles available and the demand for attention from different people is also exploding. And that will bring change everybody. I am sure the marketing department needs to continuously evolve. I am absolutely equally sure that our editors and journalists need to evolve. Very simple. Earlier, the journalists used to write only for the print product. Today, the same journalist needs to write for both the video clip on your internet as well as the basic internet product. Otherwise, it won't work. We've got tremendous journalistic resources. Why shouldn't we there not writing for multiple platforms? And that requires training. That requires understanding the media, and therefore they need to change. Similarly, our distribution people need to change. Our accounts people need to change. Everybody needs to change. And I think this change has to be hand in hand. So when you say cart before the horse, I really don't agree. I think just like our marketing department is changing and they are trying to create innovative solutions to fight for the advertiser's interest, similarly our editors are changing. They are looking at better ways of packaging a story, and I dare say our editors are fantastic at it. They are really very talented people, and they do the same good job that they've done in a very different way. And I think they are changing, and I think that augurs well for our industry.
Mr. Hamid, again as speaking for a Pakistani newspaper, here's a question I've often asked many people. As a newspaper man, do you see your reader purely as a citizen, or as a consumer, or as both? And therefore, does your advertising solution or innovation kind of change because you look at him as a citizen or as a consumer?
If I look at the history of Dawn, which is almost 70 years old, the old reader is a citizen. And what I'm looking at is the new reader. And that is where innovation will come for me. And probably there are homes where Dawn is coming, they've subscribed to Dawn for 4 generations. The 4th generation may not want what his grandfather read. And that is exactly what I'm looking at.
Mr. Hashmi, there's a set of questions I asked Mr. Dariwal, but that applies very much to you. As an advertiser in a burgeoning market like Pakistan, what are the responsibilities that an advertiser can bring so that we do good journalism, so that the core values of journalism are not hampered or harmed? What can an advertiser bring beyond demanding some things? Does he have a corporate social responsibility beyond the bottom line as far as journalism goes?
Absolutely. Actually, if you look at all the big advertisers, they have got a lot of respect for journalistic freedom, and as far as the value of corporate social responsibility is concerned, they look at it from that angle as well, rather than just selling their products and services. So this is happening, and few advertisers in Pakistan also, or in other countries as well, who wants to influence the editorial through their advertising rupees or dollars. But I think it is minimizing because the viewer and the reader has become very intelligent. They can see that if this is advertising and this is the editorial, they can connect to. So I think this is, again, the watchdog is the reader and the viewer who is bringing both of them to...
So let me rephrase that question.
Yeah.
Suppose a newspaper is very welcome to some innovations, yeah, and extremely forthcoming. Will you still tell that newspaper, don't do this because it might harm your paper? Yes or no?
No.
No.
Yes.
Okay. You will not tell that. Mr. Khan, one last question to you because you spoke of cats and so on. Despite all this optimism we see around us, are we still trying to kind of prevent the inevitable? You know, after having played a grand round at Casino Royale, are we really experiencing Skyfall at a very ferocious pace?
No, I think there's, I don't see anything, the inevitable being so drastic or so bad. I think people will innovate, and as the Times of India is doing, as our publications are doing, they're evolving. And I think in this evolution, people will find their space, as was pointed out that, you know, when one medium comes in, a new medium comes in, people think that it will replace. I personally think there will be coexistence, and I personally think that innovation is the key. We have to get more and more, engage the reader more and more, and find new ways of doing so. So I think at the end of the day, I still am optimistic.
Thank you very much. One final note on which I'll end this. One final note on which I'll end this. About 10 years back, I went to a place James Bond is very, fond of. This is the CIA headquarters in Virginia in Longley, and that's where the American Newspaper Institute is headquartered, if you didn't know. And again, we were discussing innovations for newspapers at Longley 10 years ago, and somebody suggested the finest innovation I have still not seen in reality yet. He said, why can't we create a coffee maker which digitally prints the most up-to-date newspaper in the morning when you put in some water into it. I haven't seen it yet. I hope to see it, and that's the innovation we should be looking for. Thank you so much, and we'll open the floor for some questions.
Yeah. Yes, we'll open the floor for questions, all right, but if you're crisp, we can take two, otherwise just one. Yes, the gentleman in the front, please identify yourself, the newspaper that you represent.
चीफ एडिटर डेली साहब, मेरा सवाल रवि साहब से है। हमें बड़ी खुशी हुई कि आपने कहा कि आपका अखबार रीडर के लिए है। आप ये बताएं कि अगर हिंदुस्तान के अंदर एक एडवर्टाइजर जो आपको साल में 1.5 मिलियन रुपीस का बिजनेस दे रहा हो, उसकी करप्शन की खबर कोई आपके पास आए, ख्वाह वो प्रॉपर्टी बिल्डर हो या कार इंडस्ट्री से उसका तल्लुक हो, तो क्या आप उसके खबर को तरजीह देंगे या उसके इश्तिहार को तरजीह देंगे? मेरा एक सवाल। और दूसरा सवाल ये है कि आपका अखबार जो है वो 5 रुपए तक मैक्सिमम कीमत पे सेल हो रहा है। अगर आप अपने अखबार की कीमत 15 रुपए कर देंगे तो क्या आपके अखबार की सर्कुलेशन इतनी ही रहेगी? थैंक यू।
नहीं, इतनी नहीं रहेगी और ग्रोथ कम हो जाएगी, क्योंकि अभी तो वी आर स्टिल ग्रोइंग, बट एट 5 रुपीज यू कैन ग्रो फास्टर, एट 15 रुपीज इट विल बी अ रियल चैलेंज। सो वो तो बहुत सिंपल सोल्यूशन। दूसरा आपका जो क्वेश्चन था कि किसको अहमियत देंगे, हमारे यहाँ दोनों चीजें होती हैं। वी विल टेक द एड बट वी विल स्टिल राइट अ नेगेटिव रिपोर्ट अबाउट द पर्सन। और ये कितनी बार हमारे साथ हुआ है। मोस्ट ऑफन एटलीस्ट 5 गवर्नमेंट्स, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स हैव बैंड अस। अभी भी 5 स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स हैं कम से कम भी इंडिया में जो हमको एड्स नहीं देती हैं। द लार्जेस्ट इंडस्ट्रियल ग्रुप इन द कंट्री, द लार्जेस्ट, हैज बैंड अस फॉर द लास्ट 3 years. They don't give an ad to us, and we still live with that. So these are things that happen. We've chosen a path, and that path is that we will maximize advertising and we will maximize our editorial product, and we will keep them really independent of each other, and we are happy with that path.
एक पीछे से सवाल लेते हैं, वो द गर्ल एट द बैक जी, राइट एट द बैक।
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Azbeel Raja, and my question is from Mr. Ravi and Mr. Khan, please. Sir, does innovation only mean having a variety in the tactics of advertising? Because we are talking in respect to the print newspaper as a whole. And my second question is that if you bring an increase in innovation, which results in the great expectations of the readers, So how much level of innovation can we actually accommodate or adopt or adapt? In that scenario, I believe that being traditional at least maintains credibility.
Yeah, I think we don't chase innovation for the sake of innovation. Innovation has to be to the advertiser and I don't think it comes in. It can come in many, many ways. And the first and foremost job of any artist or anybody, any writer or anybody is to get attention. And you get attention by doing something which immediately attracts the reader. So please don't have this misconception that innovation comes at the cost of
My question is particularly that if we talk about innovation, is that the only thing that we incorporate tactics of innovation in advertising?
No,
like
no,
if,
no, no.
If the,
I'm
if,
sorry, I missed that.
Yes, exactly.
No, no, no. There is a huge premium in innovation on editorial. We use innovative cartoons. We've even hired for our editors copywriters, trained advertising copywriters who can write smart headlines, so that the headlines become more interesting for people. So it is just not advertising innovation. Advertising innovation is part of it, but editorial innovation, take this whole idea of a report done in 300 words, which actually can take 6,000 words. How do you show it to your reader? You show it to your reader by by making the 300 words work very well. Just in pressy or in executive summary tell you the story, but for the detailed story you make sure that she or he goes to the detailed story on the net by linking it up through the QR code and the application alive. So we do a lot of stuff which tries to bolster our editorial.
Thank you so much, panelists. I think we'll save the questions for the next panel. We've also got an interesting panel tomorrow which talks about editorial versus marketing realities, the existential woes. So I guess it'll be great to have you all there as well. Tokir, would you like to acknowledge that?
Thank you very much, all the panelists, the moderator. May I request mementos to be presented by Mr. Arif Nizami, former President APNS, to Mr. Ravi Dhariwal. Yeah, I'll tell you. Mr. Imtinan Shahid, would you please come on the stage, Joint Secretary APNS, to present to Mr. Tahir Khan.
Thank you, sir.
May I request Mr. Munir Jilani, Publisher Paigam, to please come and present to Mr. Masood Hashmi. Mr. Javed Meher Shamsi, Finance Secretary APNS, to please come and present to Masood Hamid, Secretary General APNS. And finally, Mr. Mehtab Abbasi, Senior Vice President, APNS, to please come and present to the moderator, Mr. Krishna Prasad, Editor-in-Chief, Outlook. Mr. Mehtab Abbasi to present to Mr. Krishna Prasad, Editor-in-Chief, Outlook, the moderator. A big a round of applause, please.
An extremely pertinent panel, and at this point in time, I'd also like to acknowledge Mr. Ashish Bagga, the Group CEO for India Today Group, who is with us right now, and of course we'll hear him speak tomorrow. And we're breaking for lunch finally.
But before we break for add that all and delegates who've brought their cars inside need to take the cars outside because the Prime Minister's security team is here to check out the venue. So kindly check